Hello and welcome to the Discovery Roundtable, the episode-by-episode discussion show of Star Trek Discovery from the perspective of Star Trek Online players and Foundry authors. I'm your host, Duncan Idaho. Wait a minute, that's not my name. I'm actually Drogyn1701. Duncan is our friend who does the Foundry Roundtable with us, and not this show. Actually, my co-host for this show is Greendragoon.
Hello. Also not Duncan Idaho.
Also not Duncan. And we have a third person with us who, again, is not Duncan Idaho. So please welcome back to the show, PaxFederatica.
Hello, everyone.
And it was sort of fortuitous timing to have you on the show here because you are the new Spotlight Foundry author.
That's correct. I have actually two spotlighted missions this time around. The 100th for the Federation and its Klingon version, Wavatel Dich.
Which probably means the 100th, right?
By Romulan Republic players.
So since we're talking a little bit of Foundry here, I got a question for you two guys. Has anything cropped up on Discovery yet where you saw it and you said, I did that in a Foundry mission?
No, only from the grounds that I haven't done all that much in the Foundry missions. I'm a quality over quantity author. Or so I keep telling myself.
He says without an ounce of humility.
Nothing really jumps out at me as something that I've done.
Well, I have one, and I can't remember if I mentioned it on this show or our other show, but I have a mirror universe mission which involves the player character basically infiltrating the mirror universe and taking the place of their counterparts, much like Burnham at least tried to do in the episodes of Discovery here in season 1. So, a little similarities. Obviously, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything's traceable back to Shakespeare anyway.
This is true.
So we're all copies of copies of copies in the fiction world. Let's see. One other bit of Star Trek Online related business. If you've been following my Twitter, you know that I got a Crossfield class ship to fly. I did not win it. I got it off the exchange for like $460 million, which was a chore to raise. But that's okay. We do what we got to do to fly what we want to fly, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you it's a fantastic ship. I've been working on a sort of like science torpedo build for it with cannons, which has been a lot of fun. It's lacking in survivability right now, but I don't actually have a nice shield for it. So I'm sure once I get that will help a little bit, and I might tweak some bridge officer abilities. But one thing I have been doing with it is going through some missions that I needed to run for some gear and demoing those missions and taking screenshots and posting screenshots. So the Crossfield class really lends itself to that. It's really just a beautiful ship model.
Oh, yeah.
And it's nice as well. The 3 Discovery ships, they opened up for the new hull materials. Or not the new hull materials, the old hull materials, all of the hull material options, rather than just the ones that were built specifically for those ships. So,
any favorites so far?
I believe I'm using Type 7 on the Crossfield, which is pretty cool looking. It has some. It's a lighter hull color with some black highlights, which I find very cool. So I'm still probably playing with it. We always say Space Barbie is the new end game, and you're never really done with a costume.
That one's it's always default for T6 ships?
Something like that, yeah.
I take it back. It's the one that was the default for the newer T5 ships.
Something like that. But there's quite a few options that look good, I think, on the Crossfield. I'm still not quite happy with my Walker class, but with either the build or the hull materials. So I'm still working on that one. But it's also a cool ship. But in any case, let's move it along to this week's episode. What an episode it was.
Oh, yeah.
What's past is Prologue, which interestingly, I think earlier on the show, we were speculating as to what these upcoming episode titles might mean. And, what's past is Prologue immediately shouts time travel to you. But really, it largely was not.
No.
It was
At least not
tiny little bit at the end.
Very, very end.
Exactly.
Honestly, I thought it was either going to be time travel or a recap episode where we find out what happened.
We did get a little bit of that as well. We got a little bit of a flashback telling us kind of exactly how Lorca got from the mirror universe to our universe, and it was exactly the same way that in 10 years' time, Kirk and McCoy and Scotty and Uhura will get to the mirror universe, beamed up during an ion storm.
But of course, that opens the question of what happened to Prime Lorca.
It does.
They swap in TOS. They swapped places with their counterparts,
and it's not unreasonable to think that maybe Prime Lorca will show up. I've been watching Jason Isaac's Twitter feed. He's quite a character, off screen as well as on screen, and he seems to speak of it with a certain finality. Obviously, spoilers ahead, but he dies in this episode. Mirror Lorca does, and he seems to be speaking about it with an air of finality. Obviously, nobody in sci-fi ever dies. You can always bring him back if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, at least for the moment, my sense of it is that we are done with Lorcas.
For now, until they decide to bring him back for season 2.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that later on because I have some interesting thoughts about season 2. But at least in this case, okay, so in this episode, basically the whole mirror universe plotline comes to a head, and we get sort of the climax of this storyline, which is Lorca has outed himself. He's from the mirror universe. He's gotten loose. He's freed all of his compatriots, and now he's starting his coup, which was pretty fun to watch. Mirror universe guys on mirror universe guys, seeing Giorgio's tricks was pretty fun. So, okay, right after this episode on Twitter, somebody from Cryptic, I can't remember who, tweeted that, okay, so here's Giorgio, and she's using cover shield and summoning phaser turrets, so she's clearly an engineer.
Someone brought that up on tonight on the 10 Forward Weekly chat, too.
I want to get that effect for cover shield, so where it looks like a Discovery style force field.
I feel like there's so many possibilities that they could put into a Discovery Lockbox Part 2.
Yes, exactly.
The fidget spinner of death.
Which is interesting, she did not use in this episode.
Yeah.
It's like full on fighting for her life and did not use that. I don't know. Maybe it was just, we from the writer's perspective, it's like, okay, we did this trick once. Let's just, leave it. We can do other stuff. But in any case, Burnham takes the opportunity to get the heck out of there, and goes in the Jeffries tube and is sitting in the Jeffries tube, playing with technology, which I thought to myself, this is absolutely like a total Starfleet officer thing to do. You're basically in the middle of a war zone, and what are you doing? You're fiddling with technology to try and get the upper hand.
And let's face it, there is nothing more Star Trek than Jeffries tubes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Even the giant Emperor's Palace ship, the Charon, has Jeffries tubes. They've been posting behind the scenes pictures again on Twitter, and they were doing some shots from inside the Jeffries tube, and apparently one of the walls comes away so that they can film in there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's how they do it. They've done a lot of Jeffries tubes in the past. It's way too
Pretty
cramped
standard.
to really film. At best, you can kind of only shoot in one end unless you remove a wall.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, wild walls, as they're called, are pretty common on sets.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Most sets don't have ceilings either. when you actually go look at them, there's a great bit in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where, breaking the fourth wall, Will Smith says, if we're so rich, and the camera pans up and shows that there's no ceiling on the set, he says, why can't we afford no ceiling? There are a couple of 360-degree sets for Discovery, though, and one of them is the bridge. So you can see they posted videos and things about how they built that, and it's all around. It's pretty cool. You could film in any direction in there.
Probably why it's as large as it is. They have room to shoot.
Would have to be. Okay, so let's see what else we got going on in this episode. Okay, so Lorca continues his coup, and meanwhile, Burnham actually gets she contacts Discovery, tells them what's going on. Discovery, in a very nice part of the episode, I thought is set on Discovery, where they are trying to figure out, a plan to take down the Charon's, what do you call it, mycelial core, and destroy it, because that's what's corrupting the mycelium network.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to ask you guys this question: are you on board with Captain Saru?
Oh yeah.
I think like a lot of people, I had a hard time picturing him as captain up until this episode, but he does have a really good moment here.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think tonight or this week he proved he's ready.
It was the Captain Picard, let's make sure everyone remembers the name Enterprise kind of speech. And he was great. I mean, I'm like, yeah, Captain Saru, I'm on board. If it's Captain Saru from here on out, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
One of the latest fan theories I heard online was that in season 2 we'll have Captain Saru and then Burnham as first officer.
think maybe she'll have distinguished herself enough that maybe she will be reinstated and her mutiny expunged from the record, perhaps, which is why Spock doesn't mention it later
on. Maybe. I mean, she's someone who has been very independent and doesn't take orders well. So that would be interesting.
But that's also kind of an okay thing for a first officer, because, I mean, if anyone needs to be able to stand up to the captain, it's the first officer. And tell them when they're doing wrong, tell them when there's an alternative that they could be doing. And clearly
there's a fine line to walk, though.
Oh, absolutely. We always look at Riker as sort of, the perfect first officer. But even he got it wrong on occasion.
But I mean, it could certainly be a good arc for a season 2 of having Saru in command. And in general, he's still a fairly inexperienced captain, but having to grow into that role. And then you would have Burnham there having to kind of do the same thing in a way, sort of coming down from that. I think I know what we should be doing, and I'm going to just go ahead and do it. Down to I need to respect the captain even when he gets an order I don't agree with.
It would provide ample opportunity for both of them to grow. But there was an interesting little bit that I heard in this episode. He says something like, "I'll see you soon, my friend," or something like that. He calls her his friend.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing for them, because, their relationship on the Senjo was a bit adversarial, but they were obviously, respected each other. And then, when she commits her mutiny and comes back on board Discovery, he reacts he's very suspicious of her. They're clearly, no longer friends, if ever they were. But it's a sign that of this, character development of their time together on Discovery, and I think how she has grown as well, and how he has grown, that now he considers her a friend.
I will say I wish I had seen more of that develop on the show. We didn't actually get a ton of time between Burnham and Saru, except for a few scenes.
Choose Your Pain was probably the big episode for their relationship.
Yeah, and that would represent my biggest fear of a potential Saru-Burnham pair-up for Captain First Officer, as I wouldn't want to see another repeat of Choose Your Pain, where you've got Burnham actively defying Saru, and Saru just kind of staunchly kind of sticking to his guns regardless. They would need to develop a working relationship.
Yeah.
And I think they would, because it would, they've been through that experience, and Saru now knows that there's more to being captain than just going by the book, and Burnham, I think, knows there's more to being first officer than openly defying the captain.
Yeah,
I sure hope she does at this point. Or they maybe she doesn't get to be first officer. Maybe they just keep her around as a quote specialist who they just send in whenever it's a little too something requires her special set of skills.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see him develop past that point. I mean, that's kind of been her place in season 1, and in order to move forward, she's going to need to grow beyond that.
Yeah. So the other nice thing about this Discovery side of this episode was we got to see quite a bit more interaction with the bridge crew, particularly the cyborg Arium, who actually got lines in this episode, which is cool. But you got Saru out there giving orders and talking to the bridge crew and taking recommendations and all the good Starfleet captain scenes that we like to see. That was probably some of the most traditional Trek stuff that we've got in Discovery so far, I thought. But then while you have the sort of traditional Star Trek stuff going on the one side, you have basically like Mad Max going on the other side. The huge, big, long action sequence, culminating in Burnham goes and finds. Actually, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. What is it? First, Lorca basically gets captured, right, and brought before the Emperor, and she goes to execute him. And I'm forgetting what the sequence of events here. She does the bit where she opens the thing in the floor, which Chekhov's gun for that one, and if you know what that means.
Yeah.
And then actually doesn't use that to execute him, and that's
Well,
I think you're thinking of Stamets.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That's
Lorca.
Stamets.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
Lorca
Lorca
trying to execute Stamets. Okay,
Stamets, like he was gonna toss him into it, and instead he just has Landry shoot him in the back.
Yeah,
vaporize him.
Vaporized him. But you gotta love those vaporizing effects on Discovery. They're pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was getting a little lost in my narrative here. Lorca takes the throne room. Giorgio has escaped. She's somewhere on board, nowhere to be found. He executes Stamets because Stamets can't be trusted.
Has outlived his usefulness.
I think we're all on board with that. Smarmy bastard. He gets to die.
So now one half of that couple is dead in both universes.
We never did get to meet Mirror Culber. That's
true.
Well, maybe he's a better guy in the Mirror universe and wouldn't serve the tyrannical emperor.
Maybe.
It'd be funny if Culber was part of the resistance. Or Mirror Culber.
One thing that's good to remember is in the Mirror universe, it's not every character is not just plain evil. And we saw, a lot of different portrayals of Mirror Universe people in DS9, where, everybody, the counterparts of our heroes weren't just straight evil. Like Smiley. Smiley was not an evil guy.
No, he's basically O'Brien, except more put out.
Yeah. And it's funny, thinking about Lorca and his actions. When he was in our universe, you can't think of a whole lot of things he did that were just plain evil. I think he was really playing, whether he was considered it to be playing a part or not. He still acted as, a fairly decent Starfleet captain. Am I way off base here?
Really?
I think if you remember, there were a lot of people that kind of were questioning him in the beginning.
Well, with good reason.
Yeah. Well, remember Cornwell had him pegged as having PTSD or something similar.
I lived in the Mirror universe. I have PTSD too.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that's just downright evil that he did while he was in our universe.
I mean, they definitely played him up as pragmatic in the beginning, but yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people a lot of complaints early on about him being a more underhanded captain.
In any case, he played his part well because obviously it was clearly just everything was part of his plan to get back and take power, which we see him do very briefly here. Because he's defeated Empress Giorgio and taken over the ship, taken over the palace. Anybody who's not dead is basically swearing allegiance to him at this point. Got to see which way the wind blows. But Burnham very wisely goes and seeks out Giorgio, who is, pretty down. She's lost. And what is it? She says no one's ever going to follow her again because she's been defeated the one time, which kind of makes sense for the Mirror universe. I mean, she's shown weakness, as an authoritarian, you show weakness, and, the wolves are going to be knocking at your door. Even if you take down Lorca, someone else is going to make a try.
They've seen my neck, is what she says.
That's right. So she agrees to help Burnham, and then they go develop this plan with Discovery to basically take down the shield around the thing, the mycelial core thing, and destroy it. And Stamets comes up with the basically a way of surfing the explosion and using it to power the spore drive, because Discovery, unfortunately, is out of spores.
Oh, they have to use all their spores for the torpedo.
Was that what it was, or no?
Yep.
I thought
So they in order to destroy the core, they had to modify the torpedo, and it basically required every last spore they had.
Use all the ones they had stored up, and they can't grow anymore. So that begs the question: okay, so they destroyed the spore core, and they used up all the spores they had. So is this the end of the spore drive?
Not necessarily. Remember that while they were going back there, on their return trip, they did. I think it was Stamets pointed out that the network seemed to be healing itself, so it's possible they could start eventually growing spores again.
Ah.
Yeah, assume by that interpretation that, in theory, that their little farm would regrow.
Regrow itself.
But there's no knowing how long that would take or how long it would take to grow more spores.
Well, we got 2 episodes left, so we may find out, or it may not. They may leave that part of it for season 2.
We did skip over the climactic scene.
Oh, of course, yes. So Burnham and Georgiou. Okay, so help me out here, because clearly I'm having memory issues.
Okay, so
did they storm the bridge, or did they get?
So they basically they pretend to turn themselves in. So Burnham pretends to be bringing Georgiou to Lorca in order to make a trade. She basically says, "You can have me if you let Discovery go."
Yeah.
And so Discovery shows up, and Saru basically says, "Look, I'm not going to believe you unless I hear from Burnham." Burnham basically says, "I'm where I need to be," and
which is the signal that she's in the throne room and can turn off the shield.
So Saru fires a torpedo at the bridge, and that knocks everybody out, and a fist fight ensues.
Pretty awesome one.
Yeah,
it has to be said.
Michelle Yeoh is a very flexible person.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those kicks look painful.
We were talking about it online, and somebody said, they were talking about that kick, and then I think Lorca throws a dagger at her or a knife or something, and she kicks it at him midair. And I was saying, I don't feel like they overly stylized this fight too much, and especially the other fights involving Georgiou. But when you have someone like Michelle Yeoh, you have to have at least one Crouching Tiger, Hidden Emperor move.
Yeah,
one or two, because it's no fun otherwise, and we're all about fun. Okay, so when you guys were watching this, did it bring you back a little bit to the last time Burnham and Georgiou fought together?
Sort of.
On the bridge of the Klingon ship.
Yeah, sort of, because that one
way back in episode 2.
That one didn't go quite so well.
No, it did not.
There was a lot less knife kicks than that one.
Well, you'd have to expect that the Empress of the Mirror Universe would have a little bit different fight training than a Starfleet captain.
Yeah, and Captain Georgiou was more of a scientist. He wasn't really a fighter.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it just struck me as like, oh yeah, this is like coming like full circle or something like that.
And I'm sure there's this whole relationship between Empress Georgiou and Burnham was kind of meant to mirror that.
It's like it's this time it's the same fight that's happening. It's just under very different circumstances.
Either way, they managed to kick Lorca's butt, and they end up tossing him out into the spore core.
Okay, so were you surprised by that death or what? What do you think?
Okay, so I knew once he was outed as the Mirror Lorca, his days were numbered. He was going to be dead before the end of the season. I did not expect it to happen in this episode. I thought it would happen in the finale.
Well, keep in mind that this season 1 was originally supposed to go only 13 episodes, and this was episode 13. So maybe they planned this. Maybe they planned him to die right at the end of the season before they extended it by 2 more episodes.
And I kind of agree. I could have seen this as a season finale episode.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Instead, what it becomes is sort of a slightly self-contained mid-season detour. A mid-season plot.
Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of given up trying to figure out the structuring of this season. It's a little unusual.
A little unusual, but that's okay. So interestingly, I mean, what we see in the next 2 episodes might have been what they would originally have done in the first couple episodes of season 2. Probably not exactly the same, because they probably adapted it to be season finale material instead of season premiere material.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, I'm kind of glad they're at least getting back to the Klingon War, because we've still got the loose threads that are L'Rell and Vogue Tyler.
Yep.
As well as the
who did not appear in this episode.
Yeah, so he basically, since L'Rell did his thing, whatever it was,
we sort of still don't quite know.
No.
It was structured like it was she was killing Vogue, because she does the yell afterwards.
Killing the Vogue part of his psyche.
But yeah, I mean, the full ramifications of that we don't yet know. So I guess we get 2 more episodes to kind of try and do something with that.
But this episode also introduced a couple of new sort of ongoing plot threads. The first of which is Georgiou, instead of staying in the mirror universe, grabs hold of Burnham and gets beamed over to the
other way
Discovery.
around. Other way around. Emperor's Georgiou is ready to basically let herself be killed. And then Burnham at the last second grabs her.
That's right.
And that's starting to...
See, I need to watch these episodes twice before I do this show.
And as I noted on my blog, that's starting to become a Discovery trope. People grabbing each other to hitch a ride aboard a transporter or vice versa.
That's not new to Discovery.
Last time it was Laurel who did that.
Yeah. But I mean, twice in 13 episodes, that's kind of a high rate.
But it is another in a long line of rash decisions by Burnham.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably not one of her better character qualities.
That's something I noted last week in the chat on Mission Log Live, that Burnham probably just did it on the spur of the moment, and for all we know, she regrets it already.
I don't know. I mean, apart from that first one that we saw way back in the season premiere, those spur of the moment decisions have actually worked out fairly well for her. Probably because
except where she committed treason, where she killed everyone to hope to stop the Klingon war.
Except at the beginning, she's gotten much better at it.
Still, it's an odd character choice for a character who's supposed to be primarily driven by logic.
Yep.
Well, supposed to be and is are two very much different things. We see the human side of her quite a lot.
Yeah, but she's a little more impulsive than I would like as a character.
Certainly makes for some fun twists, though. I was very much expecting that to be the end of Empress Georgiou. I thought she was going to make some kind of heroic last stand and die and be the hero, which was quite interesting. But Burnham throws in a little twist, and we're not done with Emperor Georgiou, which begs the question: we now have a mirror universe person who's going to be in our universe.
Not to mention the former tyrannical dictator of the Terran Empire.
Yes, exactly.
This is not
these are the
not
kind
a
of
good
people in
resume.
our universe that we lock up. I thought for a while that maybe we'd keep Mirror Lorca around and we'd keep him in prison and go visit him like Hannibal Lecter, but maybe we're going to do that with Georgiou.
Well, in the trailer for next week's episode, she's shown helping the Federation.
Yeah.
So I kind of wonder, that kind of reminded me of Star Trek Into Darkness when Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan tells Kirk that Section 31 wanted him for his warrior's mind, so that's why they kept him, that's why they wanted him alive, so we could help them design the Vengeance. And from the looks of it, that's why our Starfleet's working with Georgiou now.
With perhaps Admiral Cornwell playing the role of Admiral Marcus in this case.
Yeah.
That could have been a fun opportunity, bring in Admiral Marcus. Say he makes the same mistake in every timeline. Working with the people he really maybe shouldn't be working with to develop methods that are just not what the Federation does, but with, quote, the best of intentions.
So I'm a bit of a reservation going into this next episode because according to the trailer, it's clearly setting up that this is in the future, like 10 months, they say, in the future. And basically, the Federation has been some chunk of time, a decent chunk of time has passed, and the Federation has basically all but lost the war. So obviously, that can't survive. It has to be overwritten. Otherwise, TOS can't happen.
I'm not so sure. There's a theory that I've seen that the Klingons have basically bombed the Federation back to the Stone Age, so to speak. So that could explain why the technology we see in TOS looks more primitive.
That would be a tough sell.
Yeah. I'm not so sure about that, because I think what is that they have mentioned the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Right? As being
the Enterprise is out there.
Time.
It's not in command by Kirk yet. It's still under... No,
it would be under...
Pike or April.
April. I don't know. That's a possible theory. I think, it depends on how they want to solve this problem. Are they going to do, time travel shenanigans or something like that to solve it? Or is it going to be a little bit more conventional? If it's more conventional, what you could say is that, the Klingons maybe didn't necessarily occupy every Federation world yet. they're still in the process of doing that, and so you could push them out without having everybody dead or everybody enslaved or so you could just push their forces back to the pre-war borders and then sue for peace if you can find the resources to be able to do that. Obviously, Discovery is just one ship. I mean, it's a ship that had a spore drive. I don't know if it's it's probably not exactly going to be in commission right now.
My theory is that this next episode will be kind of establishing the worst case scenario, exploring that a bit, and then the final episode will be some crackpot idea to go back in time and deliver the necessary details about the cloaking device before it's too late, and that will end out the series.
A crackpot idea to solve the crisis that threatens the Federation?
Oh yeah,
why such a thing has never happened before.
It'll require a Saru speech.
It's shades of Riker's crazy plan to defeat the Borg, where 40 Federation ships failed, but Riker's got a crazy plan, so he'll succeed. So someone needs to, and I think probably Stamets should probably deliver this line. It's just crazy enough to work. So the other plot thread that's kind of left hanging in this episode is, what's that little spore or something that lands on Tilly's shoulder, and what's it going to do? Is she going to get superpowers?
Your guess is as good as mine at this point.
Clearly. I've heard some people say, what if it's Dr. Culber's soul or something?
I don't know that I'd want it to go that way. For A, I like Tilly as a character, and B, that's not a great way to get him back.
If it was very temporary and they got him out and into a body somehow, I could go for that. If it was a short arc like that, wouldn't want it to be permanent.
I've also seen guesses that it's Lorca, either Prime or Mirror, and even that it could be something like the entity and the child, and it'll make Tilly pregnant.
Oh, let's not go there.
Yeah.
That's a weird episode of TNG.
When drawing from Star Trek, they should stay away from the worst episodes, unless they can really make it better.
Yeah, why don't we just make it time traveling slug babies while we're at it?
Why, Dragoon, are you referring to the Emmy Award winning episode Threshold?
Why, I probably am.
All right, so this episode was, basically like an action movie. It was the big, the big fight between all of the guys at the end of the movie. So what did you guys think? Were you satisfied with it on that level?
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I liked seeing the Saru-led Discovery. It did feel a lot more like the kind of Starfleet crew we're used to.
Mm-hmm. Although with all the talk about not accepting a no-win scenario, I'm a little bit surprised that the Kobayashi Maru never came up.
They were clearly trying to evoke that without saying it.
I'd actually heard I think it was in a book at one point that officers in general were not supposed to discuss the Kobayashi Maru after they'd taken it, so as to keep new cadets fresh.
We talked about this at one point on our other show, I think, or at some point, is that to do a test like that where everybody has to take it, or at least command officers at least have to take it, you would have to do something where cadets who have taken it and officers were essentially prohibited from revealing what it is.
Yeah, and Tilly was there. I mean, she hasn't taken it yet, so you don't want to ruin it for her.
Exactly.
Especially if she's got her heart set on that command training.
Mm-hmm. She'll have to take it at some point. Of course, the other flip side of the Kobayashi Maru is that it would also have to, you'd have to change it up because word would get out. You can't stop people from talking exactly. And you'd have to change it up from what we saw Savick do to something more like what we saw Wesley do, where he had he was just on a starbase or something and there was an accident and he could choose to save one person or the other. It was basically no one's there. You had to sacrifice somebody either way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they don't tell the students ahead of time that they're taking Kobayashi Maru test.
Well, Kirk, it's hard to say. I mean,
well, he took it 3 times.
He took it 3 times. I mean, he had to have known the next few times that he was taking it again.
Because the second and third time would
have had to have chosen to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been at his request.
So it's interesting, thinking about the crew of the Discovery and how before this arc, it didn't always feel like a traditional Starfleet crew, but now it does. And I read something online that said, basically this whole reason is because Lorca cultivated a very different atmosphere than your traditional Starfleet ship. And now with him gone and with someone like Saru in charge, the whole atmosphere has changed. He even says it is, this is no longer Captain Lorca's ship. This is our ship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. On one hand, I'm kind of glad to have Lorca gone. And on the other hand, I'm kind of sorry to lose Jason Isaacs.
Yeah. I mean, he was a great, he put in a great performance in all of this. It was fantastic.
So let me ask, when they started filming this, do you think they told Jason Isaacs he was from the Mirror Universe?
He said they did.
Okay.
When they hired him, they weren't. Okay, so here's what he said online. When they hired him, they knew he was from the Mirror Universe. They told him that up front. They weren't quite sure where his story was going to go, and they presented him with like a bunch of different options. And he said, if I'm going to take this job, we need to narrow this down right now. And so he sat down with them and narrowed down what some of his plot arcs were going to be. But they told him he was from the Mirror Universe up front.
Okay. I'm just kind of wondering how much of that informed his acting choices early on. Obviously, a lot.
It had to have. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure at least by the time they started filming, they would have had that all mapped out. So let's see. What else can we talk about in this episode? So here's my thinking about season 2 at this point. Is I think they are setting up a season 2 that's going to be more different from season 1 than anything else we've ever seen in Star Trek so far. More different from the previous season than like Enterprise season 3 was from season 2.
Yeah, I think in a way season 1 was kind of the great experiment, and season 2 is, okay, what did we learn from that? And kind of a shift. So it might be more of comparing season 1 of TNG with season 3, because with TNG it was a little bit more gradual, because you had season 2, which is sort of in between. But then season 3, if you compare like season 1 and season 3, they're quite a bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And part of that in this case is there were a lot of shakeups behind the scenes. A lot of different writing talent was on board in season 3 of TNG than was around in season 1. Roddenberry was gone. I think it was that when Ira Stephen Bear took over, and Ronald D. Moore came in as a writer.
The production quality.
Roddenberry wasn't gone by then. He didn't
I think
die until like early production of.
No. I mean, he wasn't dead. I mean, he wasn't dead. He was just not involved in the show.
Yeah, I think he kind of slowly offloaded his duties onto Berman over the course of like seasons 2, 3, and 4, and then he died early in season 5.
Yeah, I mean,
but also
because he was involved initially, directly. So by season 3, I think he had pretty much stepped back, or had been forced to. I don't know.
I think in many ways, season 1, the Roddenberry season 1 was Brian Fuller, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but I mean the results of him being involved in the writing process and then not being involved in the writing process, and the rest of the writers kind of having to keep going with that.
To I think take some of his ideas and put their own spins on it and take things out to their conclusion.
Yeah, but I mean that whole not them being able to do their own thing, but also not him being there to fully flush out his idea. Yeah. So I think in that sense, you'll see something.
Season 2 will really be able to see them do their own thing. So I mean, it will be intentionally different.
Yeah, and I mean, if the rumors are true, and we're not going to see a season 2 until 2019, I'm guessing that they want a lot of time to really figure out what that is.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about that? That's quite a big gap.
It is.
Well, compared to 12 years between Enterprise and Discovery, it's not so bad.
It doesn't feel so bad, yeah. I think if they take the time and do it right and give us something that's really great, I'm all for taking more time. We got Star Trek Online to keep us company in the meantime, right?
Yeah, we got an expansion this summer.
We do. Mm-hmm. Dominion-themed expansion of some sort. They haven't revealed any details, of course. So what was it? Okay, so Star Trek Online related stuff. People have asked in the Stowe live streams about the Mirror Universe uniforms. I'm 100% behind that for sure.
That came up in the 10 Forward weekly chat too this evening.
And I'm sure everyone was like, yes, please.
Yep.
They what Kale said the previous time it came up was that essentially, that's something that sure, yeah, they want to do it. It's just, finding time among all the stuff that they have scheduled.
I'm sure we could fill
he really
1,000
wants-
years of contents worth of wants.
Oh, absolutely. He really wants Captain or Emperor Giorgio's sword, which yeah, I'm there with you too. That's a pretty cool sword, custom made for Discovery apparently.
Tonight he also said the fidget spinner of death is also on his list.
I'm still holding out hope for the Torchbearer EV suit.
That would be fantastic, and just the new Klingon character customization would be great as well. Especially if we could get that in the Foundry, because we're always looking for more stuff to play with in the Foundry, especially things that are gonna help us create new and interesting looking characters.
And this episode has also it has also actually informed kind of the internal backstory I'm starting to write for basically the history of Eclipse, which is the shadowy organization that's at the center of my ongoing Foundry series.
Well, that's something that's always a good thing to do is, take inspiration from episodes of Star Trek for Foundry missions. Whether it's, to try and directly follow up something or just to, just inspiration.
Yep.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that about covers it for Pass's Prologue. It's one of those episodes that, it's the big climax, it's the big action scene, it's the big resolution to a plot line. So sometimes there's actually less to talk about in that than in the others.
Yeah.
The setup is provokes more speculation and more, discussion than the payoff does.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We're plenty happy to keep these shows a little short and a little sweet. So, thanks everyone for joining us, and until next time, enjoy the final frontier.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.